So thanks for joining us during lunchtime, and I think we also have some competition from the other room, where I think Javier Tebas is doing a keynote. So, indeed, but I prefer quality of discussion.
You cannot leave anymore.
Above quantity, so it's very good. So, thanks for joining us. Thanks for the panel members to be here. So maybe we can just start with a small brief introduction. And I think Andrea, because you traveled all the way from Rome to be specifically here, of course, for the panel and the event. Let me start with you. Maybe you can introduce yourself to the group.
Well, hello to everybody. I'm the manager of the Stadio Olimpico and Parco del Foro Italico. I come from Rome, not that far. And of course, it's a pleasure to be here and share what we do, especially concerning sustainability.
Thanks. Maybe Sander, next.
Yes, my name is Sander Stiphout. I work for this beautiful venue, I can say. I'm Director International, responsible for our innovation program, as well as for our advisory arm.
Thanks. So I think we have a good panel for you to talk about what we are about to talk about, which is how to grow and keep it green. And I think the previous panel and speakers was a perfect introduction to what we will discuss on top of that, because previously they talked about a growing business, how to ensure integrity, and talking about the governance and also diversity topics. What we will do is talk a bit more on the environmental part of what we call ESG, so sustainability in that sense. And I think Emmanuel in the previous conversation said, I will not use a video. Well, in this case, I will use a video to kick our panel off. So bear with me for 2 minutes.
The science is clear and has been communicated for the past 30 years, and still we're not moving in the right direction. I don't get depressed, I get angry. What are the systems that determine the state of the planet? This is about us. It is about our future.
All is not well with our planet.
As we increase our pressures on Earth, we are now crossing irreversible tipping points.
Nature is being degraded at a rate and a scale that is unprecedented.
When we emit CO2, about a third has ended up in the ocean.
There's no sign of any wildlife at all.
Based on the 7.5 million deaths, we have already crossed the boundary as far as aerosols are concerned.
As we manipulate the planet's climate, we're literally playing with fire.
Are we concerned about fighting the climate crisis?
The window is still open for us to have a future for humanity. We still have a chance. What we do between 2020 and 2030, it will be the decisive decade for humanity's future on Earth.
Human health, animal health, and environmental health, the three are so much linked.
We've covered the whole planet with knowledge. The future is not determined. The future is in our hands.
It's a remarkable time to be alive.
You may never look at the world in the same way again.
So this was not to advertise necessarily Netflix, but I think it's worthwhile to take a look at this documentary, and I think a great introduction to the environmental part of sustainability that we will talk about in the panel. Maybe introducing myself after the panelists did the same. So my name is Mart Beunen. I work at KPMG, leading our sustainability strategy and transformation team. And also leading our work in the wider sports sector. I think before we dig into the topic, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, obviously, maybe it's good to set a little bit the tone of what do we talk about when we talk about ESG. So ESG, it stands for environmental, social, and governance, and it comprises a lot of different topics. And what I would say is pick your battles and really focus on where you can make the biggest difference. Because if you look at the environmental topic, there's so much to talk about. You can talk about how do you look at your carbon emissions from your own organization, but also, for example, from the fan base that you have in the stadium or during a football match or an event. Because all these fans are, of course, coming towards your stadium to watch a game or go to an event, but it is a lot of carbon emissions that is being emitted with the travel. When you talk about the social and diversity topic, obviously an important one, and also talked about in the previous panel. And the last but not least, which we will focus on less today in our panel, but was previously discussed, what is the integrity, anti-bribery and corruption. And one might think, what is then the relevance for the sports sector and football and stadiums within? Well, I can tell you there's a lot that is ongoing in all areas. I was happy to see Tarek here from the FA on the stage in the previous panel, because they recently launched their new sustainability strategy. I think Coldplay World Tour, also being present here previously in the arena, very strict sustainability criteria, otherwise they don't come anymore to a specific venue. I think we all know about some of the issues in human rights, and also talking about women's football, talking about equal play, but also equal pay. And talking about governance, I didn't want to put Sepp Blatter again on stage like in the previous talk, but I think corruption and fraud is definitely something we cannot ignore. While at the same time, there are a lot of initiatives to create transparency. And one of these initiatives is, for example, what they call the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Many, many organizations in the wider football sector need to comply with these regulations. But this is not all. Just quickly scanning through some of the developments in the past few years. The Bundesliga, very active to integrate sustainability criteria into their license agreements with the clubs. The UEFA, of course, launching the sustainability rules, but also the carbon calculator to measure your carbon emission level that can be used by clubs nowadays. Like I said, the FA launching their sustainability strategy, the European Club Association, very active pushing sustainability. So I think there's a lot happening, and more recently, it's an interesting report to look at, because it also helps to give a little bit of a bright side to this topic. Sports Positive highlighting that a lot of Premier League clubs at the moment are progressing on the topic, appointing a sustainability manager, making it transparent what their footprint is. So I see a lot of stuff that is happening in the sector, which is promising. But then again, what binds all these initiatives and how does it affect your organization? And I think very happy that we have both panelists here to guide us through, but don't hesitate to ask any questions, and I will pause every now and then to accommodate that. So what will we talk about? We talk about external factors affecting your organization, the internal drivers within the organization, and then together, how do we show what are tangible sustainability solutions to be implemented in your operations? Because only the internal and external factors will not really move the needle. You need to get into action and implement stuff. So yeah, maybe let's start with the first topic then. Andrea, I think these are some nice overviews of your stadium. What do you see as some of the external factors triggering the need for your organization specifically to start this sustainability journey? Could you take us along a little bit?
Well, I mean, the first thing I can tell you is that in our case, it actually is a need, I would say. We developed and we grew a lot during the last years. Now you see a picture of our park. Of course, the art of the is the stadium. And imagine that last year we hosted 81 events at the stadium, more than 4 million spectators. We host every year at ATP Master 1000 tournament. in one day we have about more than 120,000 people coming and visiting the park. It's a small city because a lot of people are working there. What I want to say is that at a certain moment, some years ago, we really felt that being organized and of course caring about what is impact, environmental impact, particularly about the activities we do, it was something that we need to face. So external factors, I would say also, institution. Maybe later we will talk about the pilot test we have done with UEFA. Imagine it also as a role, we particularly host many events. We have some special stakeholders. Roma and Lazio, it's their home. The stadium is their home. We host Six Nations Cup, so the Rugby Association is our client. We host European Athletics, and of course we work with the Athletic Association as well as you mentioned co-play we will have shortly. So we host many events. So what I would say is also from them is coming a request for having a facility, a structure, a building like this that is able to let them implement sustainable events. So what I also say is that, of course, we are on site, but I believe that an event organizer can never make an event sustainable if it's not doing in a proper environment.
Very well. And do I take then that you see this rather as value adding than being compliant with some of the criteria that are put on you?
Yes, I mean we started with seeing which were the requirements, and of course we have seen also inside, of course, involving top management, we started from also services for spectators. I see here the quiet room we just opened, for the final of the Italian Cup. So also specific services for the disabled people coming to the stadium. And on the other end, what we are always trying to achieve is that to look at the same thing from different point of view. So from an environmental point of view, but it's also like we believe that it has to be also economically feasible. So just we will talk about waste management. It's already another example of you achieve an important environmental result. But at the same time, we reduce the cost of waste management, so it's also important.
Great. Thanks for the elaboration. Of course, Sander, this being a home game, I guess you can take us maybe a little bit along. Why is sustainability, and of course you call it your net positive strategy, why is that so important for you? Is it external triggers, internally? How does it go?
I think in our case, and I'll take you to the journey a little bit, it's a mixed bag. So I think, let's say 10 years ago, the city asked us to be, prominent in this domain, become a sustainability icon for the city. They asked that question to all the companies that the city had a stake in. So we took that seriously. We brought people together. We basically started building an ecosystem of partners that potentially could help us, because obviously we're a relatively small organization responsible for hosting the matches of Ajax, the Dutch FA, and also the concerts. So that got something in motion. After that we took several sustainability initiatives, like we created a battery, we put solar panels on the roof, some other initiatives as well. And then as we progressed, you notice that also our own personnel became actually more motivated. So I think maybe 2.5 years ago, we had during COVID actually, we had sessions with everyone involved online, and it was addressed that sustainability was found to be very important, and it was appealing to everyone. That doesn't mean that everyone is, a climate advocate or something like that. But actually, a lot of people found it important. So that was also somewhat of a trigger. Then, of course, CSRD came about, and then the question is, okay, what are we going to do? We're just going to be compliant, and of course, because it doesn't, being compliant doesn't tell you anything about how sustainable you are. It's just that you report on it. So how can we make it more fun, basically? Because the CSRD exercise, as a purely CSRD exercise, can be very boring. So if we connect that to a very interesting ambition, and that came about in our net positive 2030 ambition, then we could make it at least trying to work for us as well. So on the motivational side and as well on a commercial side, because I fully agree with Andrea, we can create all kinds of interesting sustainability measures, but if we cannot pay for them, nothing's going to happen. So that was one of the reasons why we put our ambition very bold, in the sense that 2030 net positive. By the way, back then we didn't, there was no definition for net positive. There is no definition for net positive. We had to figure out ourselves what we consider to be net positive. But nevertheless, it's ambitious, and that triggered all our ecosystem partners also, like, I want to be part of this. And we could challenge them as well. And I'm telling it very simply now, but it actually also became partly a business model. It's also driving partnerships as such, and that helps us also realizing these ambitions. Not all of them, of course, because being a front runner in this, because of this bold statement, gives us also the opportunity to apply for specific subsidies and so on, where you can actually take the next steps forward, and it's been broadly facilitated.
So you use the topic of sustainability as a business driver, while at the same time ensuring competitive advantage. That's what I hear you say.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Good. Maybe before we jump to a next topic, are there any specific questions from the audience on these external factors affecting, the organizations of these two gentlemen? Nothing in particular. I do know a couple of people obviously in the room, so maybe Christian, if I may, you also have a sustainability benchmark, right? It's one of, I would say, external factors influencing, okay, why do organizations push the needle on sustainability? What is your reflection being, I think a well-known sustainability benchmark in the sports sector on what do you see as external drivers? And I'm going to hand you the microphone if it works, otherwise you get mine.
Thank you very much. That's a little bit out of the blue. Yes, I think there are actually many, to be honest. So we see that we, for example, working very closely nowadays with investors, financing organizations, sponsors that are, obviously, they need some kind of proof that organizations heading into the right direction. And as discussed earlier on the panels, sustainability is and will be a reputational risk. And if organizations are partnering up with certain organizations that are not heading into the same direction as they are doing, obviously it's becoming a risk for them, and they need organizations heading into the right direction. Obviously, what we are doing is showing if they are actually doing this, because nowadays, as you just mentioned, also you pledge very often, you have many goals that are communicating, but obviously this is the easy part, and then it comes to taking actions and actually achieving your goals. That's probably the big challenge. And therefore, in Europe, it's the CSRD that is pushing a lot nowadays. In other regions, we have different impacts. So we're working with organizations nowadays from Brazil or the Middle East, where organizations have different drivers that are pushing them forward. So it's very, very depending on the region, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, and we'll just get the microphone back. Thanks. Sander, elaborate on that.
Maybe just expand on the external factors a little bit. Of course, we see specific developments in the football world with ECA and UEFA, publishing their guidelines, and that helps clubs and also ourselves to be able to report on it, etc. We see that the event world is moving a little bit quicker in this, and then specifically Coldplay is a good example. We can elaborate a little bit on it because we had the concert last year. You will have it in mid-July. They publish a sustainability rider, and when you look at it, it's still initial stages, if I can say so with all due respect, but it's a movement, right? So what we see is not yet today that they purely make a decision on a venue based on whether or not they can comply with the sustainability rider. However, in years to come, we could imagine that is going to be the case. And if that's going to be the case, then we have to be in there, right? So for us, if we cannot host concerts, or we are hurt by not being able to host specific concerts, then for us we quickly run into making a loss. So it's really fundamental for us to take that next step forward as well. And we can elaborate on Coldplay a little bit more in a little bit.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Do you want the mic or is?
Well, yeah. Maybe you can say it again in the mic.
Yeah.
But I know that no event is like the same, but you said that it's a movement and we're moving on and we're getting better. And then this event of Coldplay, I think, the whole focus on sustainability. But what if you compare this event of Coldplay in 2023, I think it was 24, and you would compare that with like, I think Tina Turner or Michael Jackson in 1995 being the first one here on stage, I think. So how much do we win? Is it like minus 20% in emission, or is it? So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I'm gonna pass that one to Willem. I'm gonna introduce him quickly, but just for reference, I think there's gonna be. It's obviously a complete different world. What we did, I'm going to come back to your question, is that to be able to start to compare events, back then to now, but also Coldplay to an Ajax match, to a Roma match, so that we can actually learn from each other to facilitate that. We developed a green event standard that, of course, we are reporting on the UEFA guidelines, but the event standard is a little bit more specific. It helps us to compare different events with each other and also learn from each other, because that's what we need to do as a football/event community. So that's the reason why we developed that, actually, to facilitate that. And specifically on Coldplay, this is the first time we actually reported on our sustainability initiatives. And Willem Hagen, who works also for Johan Cruyff Arena, was responsible for, actually getting all the data together and doing this all for the first time. And after that, we did it several other times as well. Willem, maybe you can...
Yeah, I think my experience from the recent Coldplay concerts was that we had Coldplay in 2016 and in 2023. So there were elements that could be compared. However, the hard part that we discovered while measuring the concerts based on the green event standard were that we missed a lot of data points, or the data points that we had were incomplete or insufficient to really make a decent comparisons. So we sort of went back and started measuring every type of event that we have, from a concert to a game of Ajax to a game of the Dutch Football Association. So together with these organizers, we started putting in all the data sources, all the initiatives that we had on several aspects, from climate action towards social elements, anti-racism, inclusion, all different elements. There are several topics that we actually researched across the event sector, because what we noticed as well is that Coldplay had asked us different questions and asked us to report on different topics than, for example, the corporate sector or a big business event. And the festival industry and the sports industry again asked different questions. So we saw there wasn't any form of uniformity across the event sector, and each aspect of the event sector had different topics that they wanted to report on. So based on that, we decided, well, there should be one sort of language, I guess, on both sustainability, that covers both sustainability but also social elements, in which we can learn from each other, share experiences, share best practices, but also understand what these best practices contribute to your overall strategy. And I guess what we found is that we had a lot of great initiatives, such as the battery, we had solar panels, we had a lot of great individual initiatives, but it was really hard to understand what the impact of that individual initiative was towards our total strategy. And to make it even more specific, because we rotate in the type of organizers for each of event, we wanted to know what is the impact of an individual event. So following Coldplay, we started looking at what data are we missing. And what we also noticed is that the data that we required in order to report on all these topics was spread throughout our entire business. And even more was with our bigger supply chain. So following the Coldplay event, we actually started implementing a strategy in involving our full supply chain, onboarding partners in delivering us with data sources on the topics that we wanted to report on. We started working with our organizers and we chose different types of events. This year we'll have Taylor Swift later in July. We will start reporting on her event as well. Just to understand what the impact of each individual event is, and then together with the organizers, that sort of sets a point zero from where we can actually say, all right, the next event you will host here, we will start working together on topics. And I guess the biggest learning from that, beside what I just mentioned, is also that I think a lot of businesses within our industry are currently struggling to understand where they should actually invest in. And what we noticed is, for example, that whereas in the Green Event Standard there are some questions asked around biodiversity, biodiversity might not be the key topic for us to address at this point in time, while our topics like energy or social are way more relevant to our type of business at this given point in time. But it is about making a conscious decision where you should invest in and what's most relevant, I guess, for your business at this moment. And I guess the reporting on events at this moment makes that possible to understand where we should we work together with our organizers.
And that, I guess, you take back into where do you focus on, what is your strategy, and so on and so on. Maybe also a bit conscious of time, obviously, and thanks, Willem, for elaborating on the Green Event Standard. I think that was very good. Andrea, maybe knowing that you are also going to use this Green Event Standard to measure, but measuring only is not enough, right? How do you organize internally to avoid that you only report, but that also things are being set into action? Could you give an example of how you've done that?
I mean, I link also to what we were saying, and I fully agree that the first step we did, it was measuring, and actually is what we did also for the Italian Cup final. I mean, it's also activating a kind of gaming, like you want to improve what you have done before, and we compare the data from the previous edition, and just to connect what we answer already from energy consumption or waste management. It's absolutely, I mean, just focusing and correcting some logistics also. I mean, you receive important benefits. What we are doing, I mean, first of all, measuring. So what I would suggest as a strategy, first of all, implement as much as possible an automatic way to collect data. A second, of course, it's we were talking about reporting. What we are doing now, what we are also using the experience from the Italian Cup final, where we did this pilot test together with the UEFA, Michele Uva, and together with what we are experiencing for the Coldplay that's coming in July, is actually to develop a reporting model. So what we want to do, starting from the next football season, is to make it available for the two football teams, Roma and Lazio, as well as what I say with any event. So we might have an event from 50 people rather than for 50,000 people. What we would like to, and we will do it, it's to make them available a platform, so to guide them before, when you plan the event. So before I said, well, if you don't have a sustainable venue, how can you make an event sustainable? Secondly is guide them, because in most of the cases, at least for our experience, it's everything relatively new. So we want to guide them, the event organizer, in order to make a plan and execute a sustainable event. And the last phase, it will be to report. And in some cases, of course, we have every year this event. So we talk also with the ATP and WTA, it will be the same. So that after one edition, you can already focus on specific areas to improve from one year to another.
And Sander, maybe trying to elaborate on this. So measuring is important, putting a dot on the horizon with the net positive ambition. Are we then there yet with integrating it into the business, or is there more needed?
Well, this is hygiene, I would say, in the sense that you, of course, you need to get the data in. You need to be able to report, of the things you did. But actually, what you're trying to achieve is that you want to look forward, right? So it's like, how do you get your non-financial system in place versus your financial system? In the sense, so for some activities we have a budget, we're trying to execute, we make a plan, etc. It will happen that we say, okay, we want to lower our CO2 footprint by X, to make it simple. Okay, so what is going to be the plan? What is going to be the budget for this specific, exercise or specific event related to CO2 footprint? And then you plan accordingly. Of course, we're by far not there, but that's where we're progressing towards. And then you facilitate, and then you're mentioning it both, the fact that, so how are you going to invest? Are we going to invest 10 euro in something that has very limited effect, or 10 euro in something that has a huge effect? So how do you figure that out? And of course, for that, we need to do a lot of homework right now. And that's why this is so much also a driver under the entire digitalization exercise, because there's so much we don't know.
So really integrating it into your, let's say, business processes and decision making, to not let it be something separate, but integrate it into whatever you already do. Very good. Maybe pausing for a second, might be a question. And otherwise, I think it's time to get to the last topic. So we talked about the external factors. We talked about how to internally try to embed that and improve it within the organization, and who you need for that. But obviously, we need to get into action. And I think Sander being here in the Johan Cruyff Arena, it would be great to get a bit more detail on what you already touched upon, which is, for example, the battery and some other solutions that you've implemented here. Could you maybe take us along what this actually means and what it helps you to achieve?
Yeah, actually, I talked about it a lot already in the past, but just very briefly. This is our energy storage. It's a 3 megawatt energy storage that we are currently expanding to a 9 megawatt energy storage. This one is operational since 2019, so it's a bit of old news, and it's fully integrated in our in the company and in the way we organize our energy during events as well. These are mostly second-hand Nissan Leaf car batteries that we give a second life actually in our storage. Nowadays, now with the expansion, that market has become fully matured. So now you cannot use these batteries anymore. So there's other batteries on the market that are more suitable. So we do it in a different way. Whole idea is, of course, that we can, well, that's at least the dream, that we can at some point in time power a full event using the power that we store in our energy storage and that we generated ourselves through our solar panels on the roof. And this is, the next step in making that dream a reality. At the same time, going back to the business case, because that might be interesting, because if you look at that's not a business case, right? I mean, we can also tap into the net and actually get the energy. So the business case is also that we, on non-event days or non-match days, that we lease this asset to the grid operator who uses it to balance the grid. And that helps in the energy transition here in the Netherlands and, well, elsewhere as well. And that is the, and for that we get paid, obviously, and that is actually a fundamental part of the business case. So this is just one aspect that came about, and because we were a front runner, we ran in all kinds of problems in getting this operational. I mean, the fire brigade, famous question was, so how do you get these batteries out of the stadium when they are in flames? Not, but there's other measures in place to, make sure that nothing happens that, impacts the safety and security of the people and the building itself.
So trial and error, and thinking a little bit about safety.
Thinking a lot about safety, and but yes, we did move with them. Actually, because, and this is the reason why we are tapping into government subsidies as well, specifically on these projects, because the government needs to learn as well. So they use this also as a learning exercise, and they also respect that in the whole process.
All right. Well, I think I'm also looking a little bit at the time, and maybe some of you are also hungry and wanted to tap into a lunch, if you have not done so yet. So I think we talked about a lot of different stuff, mostly in the environmental domain, external factors, internal drivers, and what could be some tangible solutions. Maybe giving the panelists the final go at rounding this off. And Andrea, could I start with you?
Well, if I have to conclude, what I would suggest, I mean, one key word in my opinion is, before we mentioned investment rather than cost. That's for experience scale. Sander mentioned the fact that, they could use and supply energy also on non-event dates. What we are also working on, since we have so many events, that to put all the different event organizers together, or try to identify and horizontally, identify solutions that are going to fulfill all the different needs of the different events. And in this way, of course, you're not talking about cost, you're talking about investments. And by having so many events, by having this opportunity for scale, of course, the payback period also for a large investment like the battery SE and at the arena are relatively achievable. So that I would suggest.
Yes, and I mean, to add, I think we also work very closely with the Dutch Football Federation, with Ajax, because of course we are facilitating the matches, but of course they organize it, so it's a joint effort and a joint exercise, and it the connection that football has with people in the stadium is extremely powerful, and if we somehow get the theme of sustainability woven into this, that could be very, very powerful, and that would be an example for society in a bigger picture, I think.
Thanks for these final words, and with that, I think we close the panel. So thanks for attending, and see you next time.